My oldest friend slept with my partner of 4 years. In the apartment we shared, on a couch I bought at IKEA with my own money, and carried up 3 flights of stairs myself. Everyone in our friend group found out before I did. When I finally figured it out, and walked away from every single one of them, I was the one being called difficult, so I stopped being easy. And I made sure they all felt exactly what that looked like. I'm 31. A software developer at a mid-size fintech company in Toronto's financial district. I've been in this city for 9 years, moved here from a small town in northern Ontario for university. And I stayed because Toronto is the kind of place that punishes you and rewards you at the same time. And I'd gotten used to both. I'm not particularly interesting on the surface. I pay my rent on time, which in Toronto in 2023 meant $2,300 a month for my half of a 2-bedroom in Leslieville. I put money into my RRSP every month like a responsible adult. And I show up to work early because I actually care about what I build. My parents raised me to be reliable, to be the kind of person people can count on. Turns out that quality has a dark side nobody warns you about. Reliable people get taken advantage of. My oldest friend and I met during first-year orientation at the University of Toronto. We were assigned to the same residence floor and ended up studying in the same lounge at 2 a.m, more times than either of us could count. He was funny. The kind of person who could walk into any room and immediately belong to it. I was the quieter one. The one who actually did the reading. We balanced each other out, or at least that's what I told myself for years. After first year we moved into an off-campus apartment together, and by the time we graduated we'd been living together so long that splitting up felt strange. So we didn't. He'd job hop every 18 months, always chasing something better. I'd stay consistent, build quietly, grow slowly. 8 years of that arrangement. 8 years. I started dating my partner about 4 years before any of this happened. We met at a mutual friend's birthday thing, a rooftop gathering in the Junction. The kind of summer party where everyone knows everyone through someone else. She was sharp and direct in a way that immediately caught my attention. She worked in urban planning for the city, took her job seriously, had opinions about zoning policy that she wasn't embarrassed to share. At a party, we were together 6 months before things got serious. Another year before we started talking about eventually moving in together. We never quite got there. She had her own place in Riverdale, I had mine in Leslieville, and the timing never lined up. That distance, I'd later understand, made it a lot easier for things to happen without me knowing. My oldest friend met her at that same rooftop party. He was there too, of course, because he was always there. He liked her immediately. I remember him saying so, something like she's intense, I respect it, and then I started dating her and that was that. Or so I thought. He was always around after. We all shared the same general social world, overlapping friend groups, the same local bar on Dundas West, the same long weekend cottage trips up to Muskoka every August. It didn't seem strange that the 3 of us spent time together. It seemed normal, it was normal, until it wasn't. I noticed things over the past year that I chose to explain away. The way he'd text her about things that didn't really require him to text her. Articles she might find interesting. News about city infrastructure projects. I saw the notifications once when her phone was face up on the coffee table between us. I told myself it was friendship. She liked him well enough, they got along. I was lucky my partner and my oldest friend had an easy relationship. Not everyone gets that. I repeated that to myself. Maybe 100 times over the course of a year. The way I found out was not dramatic. It wasn't a movie moment. It was a Thursday night in February, the kind of Toronto February that makes you question every life decision you've ever made. And I was added to a group chat by mistake. Flutfreltist was trying to add someone whose name in his contacts was similar to mine and grabbed the wrong person. The group chat was between him and 2 others from our wider friend circle. The messages that loaded when I got added were not ambiguous. They were talking about how much longer they thought they could keep it from me. One of them said he'd been running cover for my oldest friend. For 4 months. 4 months. My partner came up 11 times in the space of one screen scroll. I didn't say anything in that chat. I just read it. Then I screenshotted everything, left the chat without a word, and sat on my bed for about 45 minutes doing nothing. I texted my partner and asked if she wanted to come over that night. She said she was tired, maybe tomorrow. I said okay. I texted my oldest friend and asked where he was. He said he was out at a bar with some people. Did I want to join? I said no, heading to sleep early. Then I sat in the kitchen of the apartment we shared and stared at the refrigerator. We'd bought that refrigerator together. Split the cost right down the middle. Because the one that came with the place was garbage. I thought about that longer than it probably deserved. By the time I went to bed I had already made several decisions. I was going to stay quiet until I knew exactly what I was doing. I wasn't going to blow up. I wasn't going to give anyone the satisfaction of watching me fall apart. I'd grown up being told I was too quiet, too controlled, too slow to react. That night I was grateful for every single one of those qualities. I confirmed what I already knew over the next 2 days. I had my answers without needing anyone to confess. I confronted my partner first, on a Saturday afternoon. At her place in Riverdale. I knocked. She let me in. I sat down at her kitchen table and put my phone face up with the screenshots visible. She didn't deny it. That was the thing I hadn't fully prepared for. I'd expected some version of "it's not what it looks like," but instead she was quiet for a moment, and then said something about how it had gotten complicated. Complicated. Like a planning application that needed more community consultation. Like something administrative that had gotten away from her. I asked how long. 4 months, she said. Same number the group chat had given me. I told her we were done. She started to say something about how she hadn't meant for it to go anywhere, that it was a mistake, that she still cared about me deeply. I told her I believed all of that and that none of it changed anything. She was crying by the time I left. I wasn't. I drove home on the DVP with the windows down even though it was -8. Because I needed something physical and real to feel. My oldest friend was home when I got back. He was on the couch eating takeout pho. And watching something on his laptop with his headphones half on. He looked up when I walked in. I think he saw it on my face immediately. I told him I knew. I didn't raise my voice. I told him he had 2 weeks to find another place. That I'd cover both halves of rent through the end of the month, and that after that I needed him gone. He tried to speak. I walked to my bedroom and closed the door. He knocked twice. I didn't answer either time. He left the next morning to stay with one of the others from that group chat, the ones who'd been covering for him. I didn't hear from him for 3 days. Then came a long text about how sorry he was. How it started as nothing and became something, how he never wanted to hurt me. I read it and put my phone face down on the counter. I still haven't replied. The friend group fractured immediately, but not the way I'd hoped. They didn't choose my side. They chose the version of events that was easiest for everyone to keep living with. The collective story became that this was one of those things that happens, that I was handling it badly by shutting people out. That mature adults find a way to work through these things without burning everything to the ground. The one who'd been running cover for 4 months, texted me to say, he hoped I could see things from a broader perspective. I blocked him before I finished reading it. The other 2 reached out with softer versions of the same message. This was hard for everyone. They hoped I'd eventually find forgiveness. They were still my friends if I wanted them to be. I didn't want them to be. I removed every single one of them, cleanly and completely, no dramatic announcement, no explanatory message. I just stopped being available, blocked on everything, deleted from my phone. Done. My parents found out through a call I made to my mother about 2 weeks after everything happened. I kept it short. I'd ended things with my partner, my oldest friend, and I were no longer close. I was doing fine. She asked what happened. I told her the basic facts. My mother was angry in the right direction for about a week. But she's the kind of person who believes that family, which she extends to anyone she's decided she loves, should be preserved above almost anything else. She'd known my oldest friend since he started coming home with me for Thanksgiving in second year. She thought of him as a second son in the warmest sense. And I knew, even as I told her what happened, that her anger had an expiry date. My father called separately, said it was a terrible thing and he was sorry. And then said that sometimes friendships can survive these situations, if both people are willing to do the work. I told him I wasn't interested in doing that work. He said, well, give it some time. I said time wasn't the variable here. My sister, 4 years younger, lives in Hamilton, was the most immediately supportive. She called the morning she heard and said she couldn't believe it, that she'd never trusted either of them frankly, and that she was proud of me for walking away without making a scene. It felt genuine. I appreciated it. I had already started making moves before those family calls even happened. A recruiter at a company in Vancouver had been emailing me for 6 weeks. I'd been ignoring it, because Toronto felt stable, felt like mine. But Toronto was suddenly a very small city full of people I was actively trying not to run into on the TTCC, or at the Loblaws on Broadview. Vancouver was a 5-hour flight. Different province. Different coast. Different everything. I wrote back to the recruiter. The process moved faster than I expected. Senior developer role, meaningful pay increase, full relocation package including first and last month's rent in a new building near the seawall. By April I had an offer letter. By May I'd given notice on my Leslieville apartment. By early June I was gone. I didn't tell the friend group. I didn't tell my oldest friend or my partner. I told my parents and my sister. I was moving for a work opportunity and that I'd be in touch. I did not give anyone a specific address. I did not share my new phone number until I'd already arrived and changed it. The first 4 months in Vancouver were the best stretch I'd had in years. The work was genuinely interesting, more technically ambitious than what I'd been doing. I found a place in Kitsilano with a view of the mountains visible from my kitchen window while I made coffee in the mornings. I joined a recreational hockey league on Thursday nights. Nothing serious, mostly a reason to be physically tired once a week and have somewhere to be. I started sleeping well again. The constant low-grade noise of what had happened faded to something I stopped thinking about every single day. Then August came. My mother called on a Tuesday morning from a number I didn't recognize. I answered thinking it was work-related and heard her voice instead. I asked how she'd gotten the new number. She said my sister had passed it along. I made a mental note about that. She said she'd been thinking a lot, and that she'd spoken with my oldest friend's mother. They'd stayed in touch over the years, the way mothers do when their sons become close. And she felt it was important to tell me she thought I was being too absolute. That cutting people out entirely wasn't healthy. That ending a decade-long friendship over a mistake wasn't something to do lightly. I told her I hadn't done it lightly. I'd done it after a great deal of thought. She said my oldest friend was struggling, that he felt terrible, that things between him and my former partner hadn't lasted. They'd ended it, and that he was alone and clearly undone by losing my friendship on top of everything else. I told her that sounded like the natural result of his choices. She said I was being hard. I said I was being accurate. She started to cry. I told her I loved her and that I wasn't going to change my position, and I ended the call. Then I blocked the number she'd called from, and texted my sister, saying that if she shared my contact information with anyone again without asking me first, I would stop sharing it with her too. My sister apologized. Said mom had been so worried she didn't know how to say no. I said I understood and that it still couldn't happen again. September brought a letter from my father. An actual physical letter, which was so unexpected that I read it twice before I fully believed it was real. He'd tracked down my mailing address through the relocation company, via a family friend, who knew someone there. The lengths these people went to. The letter said he and my mother were worried I was isolating myself, that they believed forgiveness was less about the other person and more about my own peace of mind. And that they hoped I'd consider coming home for the holidays. I wrote back one paragraph. I said I was at peace, that I was living well, that I had no interest in reconciliation with the people involved, and that I hoped they could respect my decision. I did not invite further discussion. They called anyway, both of them on speakerphone, which went to voicemail. October. My oldest friend found my work email through a professional platform, where I'd left my settings to open, which I corrected within an hour of seeing his name in my inbox. The email was long, and clearly revised multiple times. It covered genuine remorse. The argument that I was hurting myself by refusing to repair things, and the information that he'd started therapy and was learning things about himself. He wanted a chance to demonstrate that. I created an email folder titled Documentation, moved the message there, and did not reply. My former partner reached out once, through an Instagram account I'd missed in my initial purge. She said she knew she didn't have the right to ask for anything but that she was sorry, in a way she hadn't known how to say before. I blocked the account and went back to what I'd been doing. November brought the ambush I hadn't quite allowed myself to believe anyone would actually follow through on. My sister showed up at my building on a Friday evening. I live in a secure building with a buzzer system, and she had texted ahead this time. Said she was in Vancouver for a long weekend, that she missed me, that this wasn't about any of the rest of it. I hesitated. She's my sister. I said yes. She came up. We had dinner. It was genuinely fine for about an hour. Then she said she had to tell me something. My oldest friend was in Vancouver. He'd flown out specifically hoping to speak with me. He wasn't there yet. He was at a hotel in Yaletown, and she said she hadn't told him where I lived, but she'd hoped that if she saw me first, she might be able to convince me to give him 10 minutes. I set down my fork. I told her that she had just done exactly what I'd asked her not to do. That she'd helped coordinate someone arriving in my city uninvited, while pretending to visit me herself. That regardless of whether she'd given him my address, she'd made herself part of a plan designed to pressure me into something I'd already said I didn't want. I told her I needed her to leave. She started crying. Said she just wanted her brother back. The one who used to laugh more, and wasn't so guarded all the time. I told her I was still that person, and that the guard was a direct response to what people had done when I wasn't wearing one. She tried to keep going. I stood up and waited by the door. She left. 2 days later he found my building anyway. I don't know exactly how. Either she told him despite saying she hadn't, or he found another way. I was walking back from Saturday grocery shopping, when I saw him standing outside the front entrance. He was holding a Tim Hortons cup like a prop in a film about sincerity. When he saw me he straightened and said my name. I stopped about 4 meters away and did not move closer. I told him this was not going to happen. I told him there was no version of this conversation that ended differently than it already had. He said he just needed 10 minutes. I told him he'd had 8 years and had spent the last 4 months of them lying to me. He said that wasn't fair. I said fair was an interesting word for him to reach for right now. He started talking. Something about therapy. About understanding what he'd taken from me. About realizing too late that my friendship mattered more to him than anything that had happened with my partner. I let him finish. Not because I was reconsidering, because I wanted him to hear what came after. I told him I didn't doubt that he felt bad. I told him feeling bad was appropriate, and that I hoped it stayed with him for a while longer. I told him that forgiveness was something I might eventually find for my own benefit. But that reconciliation, the actual rebuilding of a relationship, required demonstrated different behavior sustained over time. And that showing up at my building after I'd made myself clear, was not different behavior. It was the same thing, still prioritizing his own need for resolution, over my clearly stated boundary. He looked like I'd said something he hadn't prepared for. I told him I was going inside. I told him if he was still standing there in 10 minutes I would call Vancouver Police non-emergency, and report a disturbance at my building. I walked inside without waiting for a response. That same afternoon I called a lawyer in Toronto, to have a cease and desist letter drafted and sent to him, my former partner, and the 2 people from the original group chat who had been most persistent. The letter was direct. It documented the contact attempts by date and method, stated clearly that any further contact in any form would be treated as harassment, and cited the relevant provisions under the Criminal Code and British Columbia's Privacy Act. My lawyer said it was a clean, well-supported document. It went out by the end of the following week. The calls stopped. The texts stopped. The email stopped. My sister went quiet for months, then sent a short message saying she was sorry, and that she hoped I knew she loved me. I wrote back saying I knew, and that we could talk when I was ready, and that I wasn't quite ready yet. That was 16 months ago. I haven't heard from any of them since that letter went out. Not my oldest friend, not my former partner, not the people who spent months trying to broker a peace I never asked for. My parents still call. 'Cause, take those stop pushing, and they've largely stopped pushing. My father more than my mother, who still occasionally tries to reopen things, and then drops it when she hears my tone. My sister and I have rebuilt something, slowly. It's smaller than what we had before. But it's honest, which is more than I can say for what it used to be. I know. Through channels you can't fully close off. A LinkedIn update here. A passing mention from someone who had nothing to do with any of it. That my oldest friend eventually moved back to his home province. That things between him and my former partner ended badly, and quickly after I found out. That the friend group dissolved the way groups do, when the thing holding them together turns out to be one person's apartment. And one person's willingness to keep showing up. I don't feel vindicated by any of that. I want to be honest about what actually satisfying looks like, because I think people confuse it with something else. It isn't watching the people who hurt you struggle. It's standing in your kitchen on a Wednesday morning, making coffee while the mountains are visible through the window, running through your Thursday hockey schedule, thinking about a project at work you're genuinely interested in, and realizing you're okay, not performing okay. Not telling yourself a story about how you've moved on. Actually in the bones of it, okay. That is what the past 16 months gave me. That is what walking away from every single one of them gave me. Everyone said I was the problem, that I was being rigid and cold and running from something I should have faced. I let them say it. I stopped explaining myself. I stopped trying to make anyone understand a decision I'd already made. I just kept moving. The silence is the best part. Not because it's peaceful in some soft way. Because it's honest. Nobody in that silence is asking me to forgive something they're still doing. Nobody in that silence is telling me what I should feel about what was done to me. It's just me, and the life I've been building since, and that is genuinely, completely enough.